A few weeks ago, we did a video where we said that YouTube was no longer the most popular service for streaming music. So today, we've done a bit of an experiment. We've got some facts and figures together, and we're going to see if that is true.
So the basis behind what we're actually experimenting is we are comparing the amount of listens that certain artists have had on YouTube versus Spotify. That was the basis of kind of the idea of what it was doing. Is it better for you to put your music on Spotify, or is it better for you to put your music on YouTube? The answer here, without looking at this, is both.
There's no reason not to be on both.
Yeah. So there's certain things that we tested where there's different variables. There was no way of having a completely clean comparison, because certain artists that we've compared, it's obvious why one has won on one platform rather than the other, and we'll get to that. So we'll start by the first thing that we tested, which was we tested 3 very large artists. We did a rapper, a pop artist, and a band. Arguably 3 of the biggest in the world in their own respective categories. So for the rapper, we chose Kendrick Lamar. For the pop artist, we used Adele. And for the band, we used the Foo Fighters. We took those artists and we chose 3 songs, not at random, but mostly at random. We tended to pick the 2 most popular songs and 1 older track. We then averaged the views across each platform, and then the percentages that we're going to show you are the results of that. To start off, we used Kendrick Lamar. We used the songs Humble, All the Stars, and Cut You Off. And in every single case, Spotify had more views. For all 3 of those songs, Spotify had more. For Cut You Off, it only adjusted. It was about 300,000 more listens. But for his song Humble, it was nearly 300 to 400 million more views. So the percentages look like this. That's what the split is. So he won on Spotify. Kendrick Lamar has more listens on Spotify. The next artist was Adele. And Adele was the exact opposite with this. Adele has had billions of views on her YouTube videos. So we used Hello, Someone Like You, and Rolling in the Deep. And they have 2 billion, 1 billion, and 1 billion listens on YouTube. And on Spotify, they don't. They have in and around half a billion views, which is still a fucking ton of views. That is a very considerable amount of money that Adele's rolling in the deep. So this is what the chat looks like for Adele. YouTube wins hands down, pretty much. Joe, you had a bit of a theory as to why that might be.
My theory about YouTube is that I think younger people are more likely to listen to music on YouTube.
Yep.
1, because it's free.
Yep.
Did I pay anything for it?
Yep.
This is just for me personally. As I've got older, I've become less interested in watching music videos, and YouTube's primary function is to show music videos.
Yes, the majority of songs that we are featuring here from YouTube do have music videos, and I think the few songs that we have on here that don't have music videos actually suffered on YouTube because of that. So it is actually a case of music videos for YouTube. If you don't have a music video, don't put it on YouTube. But obviously we'll get to that. Next is Foo Fighters, and Foo Fighters was a lot more down the middle. So we used The Sky is a Neighborhood, The Pretender, and Monkey Wrench. Foo Fighters didn't actually have one way or the other. Like Adele, every single song was bigger on YouTube, and Kendrick Lamar, every single song was bigger on Spotify. With Foo Fighters, 2 of the songs were bigger on Spotify. They were the smaller of they were the 2 smaller songs, so that was The Sky is a Neighborhood and Monkey Wrench, and their most popular song, it was most popular on Spotify as well, but on YouTube it had way more views, like double the amount of views.
It's probably worth mentioning at this point that, especially with people like Foo Fighters, their album tracks aren't necessarily going to be on YouTube. So if you want to listen to that song, you have to go to Spotify or somewhere else.
Yeah. So there's a chance, and we didn't test this, that for the tracks that not many people are listening to, Spotify will be way more popular for those tracks for people that are actually listening to the album in its entirety. We also didn't factor in people illegally re-uploading songs to YouTube. So there's a chance that there are more listens on YouTube if the YouTube Spotify thing is quite close. There's a chance that YouTube would actually be higher based on all of the illegal re-uploads that have happened of those songs. We didn't test that, but there's a chance that that is the case. Because The Pretender has nearly double the amount of listens on YouTube than it does Spotify, that makes the result of the experiment this, which is YouTube wins just. If we didn't use the Pretender and actually evened it off, which I will just do here, yeah, Spotify wins by about the same percentage the other way. So if you used smaller tracks other than the Pretender, there's a chance Spotify would actually win for the Foo Fighters. So that means that the average between the platforms in terms of listens, so the percentage of listens from those three artists looks like this, which means YouTube wins quite considerably. However, if you work out the percentage of Spotify to YouTube based on the percentages from the artists, which makes it a little bit more fair, because Adele with her billions of views pretty much negates anything that Foo Fighters have got. Foo Fighters don't have anything that can sway Spotify into a winning position unless they had billions of listens on Spotify, which just isn't the case. So a more fairer way of doing that would be to actually compare the percentages, so that Adele's gets even to 100%, Foo Fighters gets even to 100%, and Kendrick Lamar's get even to 100%, and that brings up the result of this, which is YouTube winning, but just. We could stop then, we could say, okay, YouTube is better, but you as an artist watching this video aren't Adele or Kendrick Lamar. You're smaller. You have a smaller audience. We all do. So we compared some smaller artists. We did 3 again, but the first 2 are bands that we work with, and we did that on purpose because bands that we work with, we know whether or not they've been featured in Spotify playlists, and I think, especially from the results, that is an important distinction to make. So we have actually picked some songs that are featured in Spotify playlists and some songs that aren't featured in Spotify playlists. We also, for the third set, actually combined 2 of Joe's songs on one of my songs, from our bands, because we know for a fact that none of our songs have been featured in Spotify playlists at all. So the first artist that we chose was FIZZY. So that's an artist that we've worked with for a few years, and over the 2 EPs that they've released, they've had some songs featured in Spotify playlists. Those 2 songs that we chose were January Sun and Porn from their first EP and their second EP. So both of those were featured in Spotify playlists and thus had far more views on Spotify than they did on YouTube. As for the third song that we chose, which hasn't been featured in a Spotify playlist and is also their most popular song on YouTube, that is worth noting that it is actually their most popular song, but only over on YouTube. The music video is really cool and is like animated. It was also the most expensive music video that they've done, so that might weigh into this, so it's worth mentioning. Because the amount of views that I'm No Good has on YouTube isn't enough to sway it, this is what it looks like for FIZZY across Spotify and YouTube. Spotify wins 90% to 10%.
Really?
Yes. 89.7% Spotify, 10.29% for YouTube. That is a considerable win for Spotify. That is pretty much entirely down to the fact that they've been featured in playlists, which we expected. The next is an artist called I Set the Sea on Fire. These, more so than FIZZY have a very distinct distance between songs that have been playlisted and songs that haven't. They have some really popular songs and some not really popular songs, basically. There's a really big divide between their popular stuff and their not popular stuff. So we chose Tastes Like Funk and Iodine. That is the song that went really big and has been featured in playlists, and their newest single that has also been featured in playlists. And we also chose their song We Start Fires, which has never been featured or wasn't really even tried as a single for the album, but was before that, I believe. The numbers for Spotify are overwhelming compared to YouTube. We're talking, like for Taste Like Funk, we're talking 372,000 for Spotify, 26,000 for YouTube. So that's a considerably large amount. For the song that has never been featured on a Spotify playlist, it did still perform better on Spotify than YouTube by about 5,000 listens.
I think that's probably down to people who listen to the album. That
is probably the case, yeah. So, the graph looks like this. Spotify wins by a very large margin, by 95.5% to 4.5%. Spotify's seems to be winning for the smaller artists. So then we get on to the third test of the smaller artists, which is the only single that my band has released and the first 2 singles that Joe's band released. So that is Dogmatic with Dogmatic, Salamander with Burn the Witch, and Salamander with Greener. These results are closer on the majority because there are less views there. The big thing here is that Dogmatic, the track from my band Dogmatic, blew up 2 months ago or so, and doubled the amount of views on YouTube, which means that it's now sat on 12,000 views, just over 12,000 views on YouTube, and for Spotify is only 2,000. This is the results of all of that. So YouTube wins a lot with this, but that is mainly because of one video with one big set of views. If I actually get rid of my track and just use your band, it evens out to, bear with me, it evens out to 53% and 47%. So it's a lot closer without that one anomaly, and that happened because the song actually got shared over on Reddit and blew up. So without that anomaly in there, it is a bit more even. The conclusion with this seems to be that if you're a huge artist, it really depends what platform you're biggest on. Whether that there is a reason why Adele has such a massive amount of views on YouTube compared to Spotify, I don't know it. I
personally believe that because Adele's audience, I would say, is primarily younger people, like maybe under 18-year-olds. I think they are more likely to watch it on YouTube. And I think another thing that we need to factor in is the fact that bigger artists are going to have better music videos.
That's true.
Because they have a lot of money to spend on them. So if I was thinking about watching a music video, I am more likely going to watch one by a bigger artist than a smaller artist because it is going to be better.
Yep. For the bigger artists, it's harder to tell. With the smaller artists, it's pretty much sold at the fact that if you can try to get yourself in Spotify playlists, Spotify is the way to go. Bearing in mind, if we actually compared full streaming sites, because Apple Music is taking up about 40% of the streaming capacity for artists that we work with, that would actually take the numbers for streaming versus YouTube way higher than it already is. And Spotify is already beating YouTube for 2 of these artists. If you do music videos, obviously put it on YouTube. If you aren't going to do a music video for a song, you don't necessarily need to be putting it on YouTube. There aren't that many views to be gained with just artwork. Spotify, you're best off putting it on anyway, because you can use distribution tools to get yourself onto every distribution platform, every single marketplace, streaming platform you can get your music onto in the same process. So there is no reason to not get on Spotify. The problem is if you don't get yourself into playlists and or don't already have a bit of an audience behind you, it is a big struggle to get views on Spotify. However, if you do manage to play the game and get yourself onto Spotify playlists, it can be very, very, very good for the amount of people that are finding your music. Would you agree with that as a conclusion?
I would.
The big conclusion to this is that there is no winner between Spotify and YouTube. There is no clear, this is better than this. However, you shouldn't see it as a bit of a competition between the two. You should see it as 2 different things. If you're promoting your music videos, there is one place to do it.
I think that there is more to gain from smaller artists from Spotify than there is on YouTube. Because on Spotify, if you have good figures, you are more likely to be picked up on radio.
That's true.
The same cannot necessarily be said for YouTube.
That is true. And if you play the game with Spotify and get yourself into playlists, you are more likely to get yourself into playlists. If that makes sense. If you get featured in a playlist, you are way more likely to get featured in another playlist. However, and it kind of snowballs.
Another thing to take into consideration, was it the Brit Awards that happened recently?
Yes.
About 2 months ago. Well, Dua Lipa, who was a female solo artist,
yes,
won an award, didn't she?
Did.
She got started by singing covers on YouTube.
Yep.
Maybe for very, very low level artists trying to take the first steps in a career, doing something like that on YouTube is the best way to go.
Yes. So, really it is just a case of use each tool differently. Don't treat them both as the same thing. If you're just putting your music out and are going to spend no extra effort on the video itself, YouTube isn't that great of a tool. However, if you are going to play the game with YouTube and make videos and make covers, it's a really great place to have people find your music. It is probably best to argue that if you aren't being featured on Spotify playlists, the best way to get found would be on YouTube rather than Spotify, because Spotify is just a case of, unless people are searching for you or you're in playlists, you aren't getting found. There is no way of getting people to just randomly stumble across your music, whereas YouTube has algorithms in place to push things that you might not have seen before in your direction. So, play the game differently. Play YouTube how YouTube wants you to play it. Play Spotify how Spotify wants you to play it. And do both. And whether you get bigger on Spotify or bigger on YouTube doesn't necessarily matter. You just got to play the game right. I hope this video was helpful because I wasn't necessarily expecting the results that we got. I wasn't expecting ADELE to be so huge on YouTube.
You think it's worth considering as well different genres?
And like you say, age range also comes into genre as well, because the younger audience generally is pop, and as you get older, generally you're gonna like what was pop, if that makes sense, and that's gradually evolves over time. So Foo Fighters almost definitely have an older audience, and are pretty even across Spotify and YouTube, except when you're weighing Pretender. So don't know. It's an odd one. I think definitely the album tracks versus singles is a big thing, because Spotify encourages you to listen to albums. Until recently, it was the first thing to pop up. They've recently gone to chronological order for singles and albums, but it used to be all of the albums at the top, all of the singles buried at the bottom. So they were genuinely encouraging, listen to this in its entirety. YouTube has never done that. You can't really find a playlist of songs on YouTube. They exist, but they're a lot harder to find.
And on the homepage of YouTube, the only thing that is really pushed to you, unless you have a YouTube account and you've kind of set your own preferences by watching different videos, you're gonna get recommended all the pop stuff, because the record labels behind the big pop artists are pushing that more.
Although that is kind of the case on Spotify too. If you've not listened to too much music, the stuff that will be on your front page of Spotify will be the chart.
That's true, yeah.
So that might even itself out, but even so, Spotify encourages you to go and find your own thing, and they make playlists every single week tailored to music that you've previously listened to. YouTube doesn't. It has those playlists that are like rock mix, which is just a random assortment of tracks that they think are rock. As far as I'm aware, it's algorithmically generated, so it's totally bizarre. Whereas Spotify, as much as it does have algorithm playlists, it also has curated playlists that it also pushes to you based on your preferences.
However, no matter what you watch on YouTube, you will always get recommended Carpool Karaoke with James Corden.
Yes.
It's a shame, but it's a fact.
On that note, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it was kind of helpful, because we learnt a lot, so I hope you learnt a lot too. Yeah, we'll see you next week. See you later.